You are not overwhelmed. You are untrained. Your emotions are not the problem, your lack of control is. Every mood that hijacks your behavior, every impulse that derails your discipline, every reaction you later regret is evidence of the same truth. Emotional control is a skill, and skills must be trained daily. This audiobook is not about suppressing feelings. It is about building authority over them. If your emotions decide your actions, you are not in control of your life. By the end of this book, that ends. Chapter 1. Stop letting feelings vote on your decisions. Most people don't realize this, but every day they are running a democracy inside their own head. They let their emotions vote. Tired? Vote to quit. Angry? Vote to react. Unmotivated? Vote to delay. Insecure? Vote to stay silent. Excited? Vote to overcommit. And whichever emotion shouts the loudest wins. That is not self-awareness. That is self-abandonment. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Your emotions are not wise. They are not strategic. They are not designed to build the life you want. Emotions are signals. They are data. And data is meant to be interpreted, not obeyed. That's the key. The moment you let feelings decide your behavior, you give up authority. And authority, once surrendered, is hard to reclaim. You have a choice. You can feel everything and still act deliberately. Or you can let feelings vote and live with the consequences. Most people choose the second option and then blame life for the outcome. They say things like, "I just wasn't feeling it. I wasn't in the right headspace. I needed to listen to my emotions." What they're really saying is, "I didn't lead myself." They confuse emotional obedience with authenticity. They call reactivity being human. They call lack of discipline self-care. And it sounds reasonable until you look at the results. Unstable progress, inconsistent behavior, broken promises to themselves, and a quiet loss of self-respect they never quite name. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Feel it. Don't follow it. That single distinction will change everything if you apply it. Let's be clear about something. This audiobook is not teaching you to suppress emotion. Suppression makes emotions leak out sideways, through resentment, burnout, and passive aggression. Control is different. Control means you experience the emotion fully, without handing it the steering wheel. You don't deny fear. You don't deny anger. You don't deny boredom or doubt. You acknowledge it. You register it. And then you decide anyway. That's the key. Right now, most people live like this. Emotion first. Behavior second. Trained individuals live differently. Observation first. Decision second. Emotion stays in its proper place. You have a choice. Here's a practical example. You wake up tired. Your body sends a signal. Fatigue. That signal is real. But what most people do is treat that signal as a command. I feel tired, so I won't train. I feel tired, so I'll procrastinate. I feel tired, so today doesn't count. That's not data processing. That's emotional obedience. A trained response sounds different. I feel tired. Pause. Noted. What is required anyway? Feel it. Don't follow it. The emotion informs you. The decision still belongs to you. This is where emotional authority begins. Most people never practice this separation. They fuse feeling and action together. Anger becomes shouting. Anxiety becomes avoidance. Sadness becomes withdrawal. Excitement becomes recklessness. No pause, no filter, no leadership, just impulse dressed up as honesty. You don't need their permission to live differently. You don't need society's approval to stop outsourcing your life to moods. That's the key. Emotional control is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming reliable. Reliable to yourself. Reliable under pressure. Reliable when motivation disappears. Because motivation always disappears. And when it does, only one thing remains. Your ability to act without emotional agreement. You have a choice. Here's a rule that will serve you for life. Never make long-term decisions in short-term emotional states. Most people do the opposite. They decide futures based on moods. They burn bridges when angry. They quit paths when bored. They commit when excited and regret it when calm. And then they say, I don't know why this keeps happening. You know why? You keep letting feelings vote. Feel it. Don't follow it. This chapter is not asking you to become emotionless. It's asking you to become the authority in the room internally. When a feeling shows up, imagine it sitting across from you at a table. You listen. You don't obey. You don't yell it down. You don't let it take over. You acknowledge it, and then you decide. That's the key. Start small. Today, when you feel resistance, don't negotiate. When you feel irritation, don't explain it away. When you feel doubt, don't obey it. Pause. Name the feeling. Proceed anyway. You are not ignoring your emotions. You are putting them in their proper role. And over time, something powerful happens. Your emotions begin to trust your leadership. They stop screaming. They stop hijacking. Because systems calm down when leadership shows up consistently. That's not philosophy. That's conditioning. What you repeat, you reinforce. Every time you act without emotional permission, you train authority. Every time you delay because of mood, you train weakness. You have a choice. And here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't choose consciously, your emotions will choose for you. Automatically, predictably, endlessly. This chapter is the foundation. If you miss this, nothing else works. No habit system, no mindset shift, no productivity trick. Because everything rests on this ability to feel without following. Say it again. Feel it. Don't follow it. That's how emotional control begins. You stop letting feelings vote. You stop calling reactivity human. You stop surrendering authority to internal noise. And once you do that, you're ready for the next step. Because stopping emotional voting is not enough. You must train discipline before pressure arrives. You learned to separate feeling from action. Now it's time to build strength before the storm. Chapter 2. Emotional discipline is built before the storm. Most people believe they will suddenly become strong when pressure arrives. They think clarity will appear in crisis. They think courage will rise when stakes are high. That belief is comforting. And it is false. You do not rise under pressure. You default. You default to whatever you have trained. You default to your emotional conditioning. You default to your habits, visible and invisible. That's the key. Pressure does not create character. It reveals it. When stress hits, your nervous system does not ask what you intend to do. It executes what you have repeated. If you panic daily, you will panic under fire. If you avoid discomfort daily, you will collapse under demand. If you train calm daily, calm will show up automatically. You have a choice. Most people wait for chaos to practice control. That is like waiting for a flood to learn how to swim. Too late, too loud, too overwhelming. Emotional discipline must be built in quiet moments, in boring moments, in moments where nothing is wrong, because that is when training sticks. I train calm when nothing is wrong. Say it again. I train calm when nothing is wrong. Most people only care about emotional control when emotions are already out of control. They search for techniques mid-meltdown. They want hacks during breakdowns. That's not training. That's damage control. Training happens before the demand. Look at any discipline system. Athletes don't wait for competition to train. Soldiers don't wait for combat to prepare. Pilots don't wait for emergencies to practice procedures. Only emotionally undisciplined people believe they'll figure it out under stress. And then they don't. They snap. They freeze. They react. They regret. You don't need their permission to train differently. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Your calm under pressure is borrowed from your calm in peace. If your daily life is chaotic, reactive, rushed, and emotionally noisy, pressure will amplify that chaos. If your daily life is structured, intentional, and emotionally governed, pressure will sharpen you. That's the key. Most people misunderstand calm. They think calm is the absence of stress. It isn't. Calm is a trained response. Calm is the ability to stay regulated while stress is present. And that ability is not genetic. It is practiced. I train calm when nothing is wrong. Let's make this practical. Neutral moments are moments with no stakes, no audience, no crisis, no urgency, and most people waste them. They scroll, they rush, they stimulate, they distract. They never practice stillness. They never practice restraint. They never practice non-reaction. So when pressure hits, stillness feels foreign. Restraint feels impossible. Non-reaction feels unsafe. That's not a personality flaw. That's a training gap. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. You have a choice. Today, you can begin using neutral moments as training sessions. When you're waiting in line, don't reach for stimulation. When you're mildly irritated, don't vent. When you're bored, don't escape. Pause. Regulate. Stay present. Those moments feel insignificant. They are not. They are rehearsals. Every time you remain calm when nothing is wrong, you deposit strength into your nervous system. And later, when something is wrong, you withdraw that strength automatically. That's the key. Most people never connect the dots. They think emotional strength is tested only in big moments. It isn't. It's built in small ones. You don't need a crisis to practice calm. You need consistency. Here's a hard truth most people avoid. If you cannot control your emotional state in low-pressure situations, you have no business expecting control in high-pressure ones. That expectation is arrogance disguised as optimism. You have a choice. You can continue living emotionally untrained, hoping pressure will be kind to you. Or you can prepare deliberately. Training calm looks like this. You slow your breathing when nothing is happening. You lower your tone when there is no conflict. You maintain posture when nobody is watching. You finish tasks even when motivation is absent. None of that feels heroic. That's why it works. Calm is boring to the untrained mind. Discipline always is. But boredom is where mastery grows. I train calm when nothing is wrong. Say it again. Because repetition is what rewires you. Most people seek intensity. Disciplined people seek consistency. That's the difference. And here's something critical. When you train calm daily, your emotions stop feeling like threats. Stress becomes information. Pressure becomes a signal, not an enemy. Your body recognizes the state. It says, "We've been here before." That familiarity is power. Without it, stress feels overwhelming. With it, stress feels manageable. You don't eliminate stress. You eliminate panic. That's the key. And panic is what destroys performance, relationships, and judgment. Not pressure. Pressure sharpens the trained. It breaks the unprepared. You have a choice. From this moment forward, treat calm as a skill. Not a mood. Not a personality trait. A skill. And skills are built through repetition, not insight. Every neutral moment is a chance to train. Every small irritation is a test run. Every boring task is conditioning. Ignore this and pressure will always own you. Apply it and pressure will start working for you. This chapter teaches preparation. But preparation is not enough. Because even with training, emotions will still speak. Thoughts will still push. Impulses will still arise. Which means the next skill is critical. You must learn to pause, or you will always be late to your own decisions. You are training calm before the storm. Now it's time to learn how to interrupt impulse in real time. Chapter 3. Your reactions are conditioning you against yourself. Most people think their reactions are temporary. They think an outburst ends when the moment ends. They think an emotional slip is isolated. It isn't. Every reaction is training. Every emotional overreaction is a rehearsal. Every loss of control is a lesson your nervous system memorizes. And your system always learns the wrong lesson if you let it. That's the key. Your brain does not care what you meant to do. It records what you repeated. You snapped once? It got easier to snap again. You avoided once? Avoidance became familiar. You overreacted once? Your system logged it as an acceptable response. What you repeat, you reinforce. Say it again. What you repeat, you reinforce. Most people are unknowingly conditioning themselves into emotional weakness. Daily, quietly, automatically. Then they wonder why control feels so hard. You have a choice. You can keep reacting and strengthening the habit of reaction. Or you can interrupt the cycle and build authority. There is no neutral. Here's how conditioning actually works. Your nervous system is a pattern recognition machine. It seeks efficiency, not wisdom. If anger leads to release, it remembers. If anxiety leads to escape, it remembers. If irritation leads to venting, it remembers. Next time, it pushes faster, stronger, earlier. Not because you're broken. Because you trained it that way. That's the key. People say, "I can't help it." That's rarely true. What they mean is, "I've helped it too many times." They've reinforced the pattern. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. You don't lose control in one big moment. You lose it through thousands of small permissions. I'll react just this once. I deserve to vent. It's understandable that I snapped. Each justification is a training session, and training always compounds. You have a choice. Let's make this real. Think about the last time you overreacted. Raised your voice. Sent the message. Shut down. Stormed off. In that moment, your body experienced relief. Tension discharged. Your nervous system connected the dots. Reaction equals release. That connection is dangerous. Because next time tension rises, your system will demand the same release, faster and louder. You didn't just express emotion. You programmed a shortcut. What you repeat, you reinforce. This is why emotional control is not about winning one battle. It's about breaking a pattern. Most people try to control themselves only after the reaction has already begun. Too late. The work happens earlier, at the moment of impulse. Impulse is not an order. It's an invitation. And every time you accept it without question, you strengthen it. That's the key. Here's the shift you must make. Stop asking, "How do I calm down?" Start asking, "What am I reinforcing right now?" Because calming down after reacting still reinforces reaction. Authority is built when you don't react. When you feel the urge and choose differently. That moment is gold. That moment is rewiring. You have a choice. Most people miss that moment because they are addicted to expression. They believe emotions must be expressed immediately or they'll explode. That belief is false. Delayed response is not suppression. It's regulation. And regulation is strength. When you pause instead of reacting, your nervous system experiences something new. Tension without discharge. It doesn't like it at first. Pushes harder. That's normal. Stay steady. Because when no reaction follows, the system learns a different lesson. Impulse does not control behavior. That lesson changes everything. What you repeat, you reinforce. Repeat pause, reinforce authority. Repeat restraint, reinforce control. Repeat silence, reinforce leadership. This is how emotional strength is built. Not through insight, through interruption. Most people are reactive because reactivity feels familiar, not because it's necessary. You don't need their permission to break this pattern. You don't need anyone to agree with your silence. You only need consistency. Here's a simple rule. Never reward an impulse with immediate action. Anger wants expression. Delay it. Anxiety wants avoidance. Stay present. Ego wants defense. Remain quiet. Each time you refuse, the impulse weakens. Each time you obey, it strengthens. That's the key. You are either conditioning emotional authority or emotional fragility daily, in small moments no one sees. This is why emotional control feels invisible at first. No applause, no recognition, no validation, just internal strength building quietly. Most people quit here because they want immediate relief, not long-term power. You have a choice. Understand this. Your future reactions are being decided by today's repetitions. Not tomorrow. Not under pressure. Today. Right now. If you react today, you train reaction. If you pause today, you train control. There is no exception. What you repeat, you reinforce. Say it again. Because this is the lever. This chapter is about responsibility. Not blame. You didn't choose your early conditioning. But you are choosing whether it continues. And that choice is exercised in moments of discomfort. Small discomfort. Short discomfort. That's all it takes. Endure the urge. Deny the impulse. Remain steady. Your nervous system will adapt. It always does. And once it adapts, emotional control stops feeling like effort. It becomes default. That's where authority lives. But there is one skill you must master for this to work. One moment that determines whether you reinforce weakness or strength. The pause. Without it, conditioning runs automatically. With it, you reclaim control. You've learned how reactions train you against yourself. Now you must learn how to interrupt them in real time. That requires precision. That requires awareness. That requires one simple action. Chapter 4. Learn to pause or stay a slave to impulse. There is one moment that decides everything. One moment most people never notice. One moment where freedom either begins or disappears. The pause. Not the reaction. Not the emotion. The pause before the reaction. That's the key. The pause is the smallest action with the largest psychological payoff. Costs almost nothing, and it gives you control over everything. Without the pause, impulse wins by default. With the pause, you choose. You have a choice. Most people believe control requires strength, willpower, or motivation. It doesn't. It requires timing. Impulse is fast. Training is slow. So you don't fight impulse with force. You interrupt it with delay. Pause first. Act second. Say it again. Pause first. Act second. Impulse thrives on speed. It needs immediacy to survive. Anger demands expression now. Anxiety demands escape now. Ego demands defense now. Desire demands gratification now. The pause starves impulse of oxygen. That's the key. Most people never pause. They feel and move, think and speak, react and justify. Then they ask why they feel out of control. Control was never missing. It was skipped. You don't need to eliminate impulse. You need to delay obedience. Even a few seconds changes the outcome. Here's what happens inside your body during a pause. When impulse arises, your nervous system floods you with urgency. Heart rate increases. Muscles tighten. Thoughts narrow. If you act immediately, the pattern completes. Impulse gets rewarded. But if you pause, even briefly, your system encounters something unfamiliar. Urgency without action. That interruption forces recalibration. The intensity drops. The clarity returns. The choice reappears. That's the payoff. Pause first. Act second. Most people assume pausing will make emotions stronger. It doesn't. It makes them shorter. Reaction feeds emotion. Pause drains it. That's why impulsive people feel overwhelmed all the time. They keep amplifying what could have passed. You have a choice. The pause is not passive. It is an active decision to lead. It says, I see the urge. I am not obeying yet. I decide when action happens. That is authority. And authority must be trained. Start small. You don't need heroic pauses. You need consistent ones. When you feel the urge to speak, pause. When you feel the urge to send, pause. When you feel the urge to quit, pause. You are not denying action. You are sequencing it. Impulse wants to go first. You put it second. That's the key. Most people fear the pause because silence feels unsafe to the untrained mind. They worry they'll lose momentum, lose their edge, lose their voice. They don't. They gain precision. The pause filters noise from signal. And when you act after the pause, your action lands harder, cleaner, more controlled. This is why disciplined people look calm and decisive at the same time. They pause. Then they move. You don't need their permission to slow down internally. The world rewards speed, but only when it's guided. Speed without pause is recklessness. Speed after pause is power. Pause first. Act second. Here's a simple practice. The moment you feel urgency, say internally, "Not yet." That phrase alone creates space. Not suppression. Space. Inside that space, ask one question. What happens if I don't act right now? Most impulses lose their argument instantly. Anger realizes it doesn't need expression. Anxiety realizes escape isn't required. Ego realizes silence won't kill it. That realization weakens the impulse permanently. What you interrupt, you weaken. What you obey, you strengthen. You already know this. That's the key. The pause is not just a tool for conflict. It is a training mechanism. Every pause teaches your nervous system that urgency does not equal command. Over time, impulses arrive softer, slower, less demanding, because they no longer control behavior. You do. But here's the discipline most people avoid. The pause must happen before justification. Most people pause only long enough to explain why reacting is okay. That's not a pause. That's preparation. A real pause has no story, no explanation, no defense, just stillness. And stillness is uncomfortable at first. Stay there. That discomfort is the rewiring. You have a choice. Either tolerate short-term discomfort now, or tolerate long-term regret later. One builds strength. The other builds patterns you'll spend years undoing. Pause first. Act second. Say it until it becomes instinct. Because when pressure rises, thinking slows. But training remains. The pause becomes automatic only if you practice it deliberately. Daily. In small moments. When the stakes are low. That's where mastery is built. This chapter gave you the most powerful lever in emotional control. But pausing alone is not enough. Because many people pause and then act to feel better. They still choose relief over strength. They still seek comfort instead of conditioning. And that leads us to the next discipline. You've learned how to interrupt impulse. Now you must learn what not to chase afterward. Because emotional control is not about feeling better. It's about becoming stronger. Chapter 5. Stop trying to feel better and start getting stronger. Most people think emotional control means feeling better. Less stress, less discomfort, less tension. That belief is the trap. Because the pursuit of relief is what keeps emotions weak. That's the key. When your primary goal is to feel better, you train fragility. You teach your nervous system that discomfort is dangerous. You condition yourself to escape instead of endure. And then you wonder why emotions feel overwhelming. It's not because you feel too much. It's because you escape too quickly. Strength over relief. Say it again. Strength over relief. Most emotional problems are not caused by emotion itself. They are caused by the refusal to tolerate it. The moment discomfort appears, most people rush to neutralize it. They distract. They vent. They numb. They justify. They self-soothe prematurely. And every time they do, they weaken their emotional capacity. That's the key. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it shrinks your tolerance window. The smaller your tolerance, the louder emotions feel. The louder emotions feel, the more control you lose. This is not a mystery. It's conditioning. You have a choice. You can build emotional strength, or you can chase emotional relief. You cannot do both. Here's the hard truth most people avoid. Trying to feel better is not emotional mastery. It's emotional dependency, dependency on calm, dependency on certainty, dependency on reassurance. And anything you depend on controls you. Strength over relief. Strong people don't feel less emotion. They can hold more of it without reacting. That's the difference. Most people want calm without capacity, peace without training, stability without discipline. That doesn't exist. Emotional strength is built the same way physical strength is built. Through controlled exposure, through resistance, through staying present under load. You don't get stronger by avoiding weight. You get stronger by carrying it. That's the key. Discomfort is not the enemy. It is the training stimulus. When you rush to feel better, you interrupt the training. You tell your nervous system, "This is too much," and it believes you. Next time, it panics sooner. That's why comfort seekers become emotionally brittle. Small stress feels big. Minor tension feels overwhelming. Normal pressure feels unbearable. Not because they are weak people, but because they trained weakness. You have a choice. Start reframing emotional discomfort as resistance. Boredom is resistance. Anxiety is resistance. Frustration is resistance. Urges are resistance. And resistance is where strength is built. When discomfort shows up, don't ask, "How do I make this go away?" Ask instead, "How long can I stay present without reacting?" That question changes everything. Strength over relief. This chapter is not telling you to suffer unnecessarily. It's telling you to stop escaping prematurely. There is a difference. Endurance builds capacity. Escape shrinks it. Most people self-soothe at the first sign of tension. They never let their system adapt. So their emotions remain loud, erratic, and controlling. You don't need their permission to stop chasing comfort. You don't need validation for choosing strength. You need consistency. Here's a powerful rule. Do not seek relief while the emotion is still teaching you. Let it finish. Emotions rise. They peak. They fall. Unless you interrupt them. Most people never let them fall naturally. They interfere too soon. And interference keeps emotions stuck. That's the key. When you stay present without acting, something unexpected happens. The emotion loses authority. Not because you fought it, but because you outlasted it. That experience rewires you. Your nervous system learns, "This is survivable. I don't need to react. I can hold this." That lesson is strength. Strength over relief. Say it again. Because this is the pivot point of emotional control. Relief is seductive. Strength is earned. Relief feels like care. Strength is care. Care for your future self. Care for your consistency. Care for your self-respect. Every time you choose strength over relief, you expand your emotional range. You become harder to shake, harder to manipulate, harder to destabilize. Not numb, stable. Most people confuse stability with suppression. It isn't. Suppression is denial. Stability is capacity, a larger container. And capacity only grows when stretched. You have a choice. Right now, today, this week, you will feel discomfort. That's guaranteed. The question is not whether you feel it. The question is what you do next. Will you chase comfort, or will you build strength? One leads to fragility. The other leads to authority. And authority feels different. Quiet. Solid, reliable, Not dramatic, not loud, just present. This chapter dismantles the lie that emotional control means feeling good. It doesn't. It means being able to act well, even when you don't feel good. That's the discipline. And that discipline must be practiced daily. Because emotional strength is not a breakthrough. It's a habit. Which brings us to the next truth. Most people think emotional control is something you either have or don't have. A trait, a temperament, personality feature. That belief keeps them stuck. Because emotional control is not who you are. It is what you train, daily, relentlessly, whether you realize it or not. You've stopped chasing relief. You've chosen strength. Now you must understand what emotional control really is. Not a gift, not luck, a training process. Chapter 6. Emotional control is a daily training session, not a personality trait. Some people look calm in chaos. Others look reactive even when nothing is happening. Most assume that difference is personality. They say things like, "He's just naturally calm. She's always been emotional. That's just who I am." That belief is convenient. And it is wrong. Emotional control is not a trait. It is a practice. That's the key. No one is born regulated. No one arrives disciplined. What you are seeing in calm people is not temperament, it is training. And what you are seeing in reactive people is not destiny. It is repetition. I train this daily. Say it again. I train this daily. Most people don't realize they are training their emotions every single day. They think training only happens when you try. It doesn't. Training happens whether you are aware of it or not. Every reaction is a rep. Every pause is a rep. Every excuse is a rep. Every act of restraint is a rep. You are always training something. The only question is what? You have a choice. People who lack emotional control love the personality explanation because it removes responsibility. If it's just how I am, then nothing has to change. But the truth is harsher and more empowering. If it was learned, it can be retrained. That's the key. Look at your daily behavior. Do you rush? Do you vent? Do you distract at the first sign of discomfort? Do you justify reactions instead of correcting them? That is not personality. That is practice. And practice compounds. Most people train emotional weakness without realizing it. They repeat the same patterns and call them identity. I'm just impatient. I've always been anxious. I can't help getting angry. What they mean is, I've practiced this long enough that it feels automatic. Automatic does not mean permanent. It means conditioned. I train this daily. The calm people you admire are not lucky. They are repetitive. They practiced not reacting when it was uncomfortable. They practiced staying composed when no one was watching. They practiced discipline in moments that felt insignificant. And over time, those repetitions became default. That's how emotional control works. Not through insight, through frequency. You don't wake up calm one day. You earn it through hundreds of small decisions. You have a choice. Most people only try to be calm when they're already emotional. That's like trying to build muscle during a competition. Too late. Training happens outside the moment of demand. Calm is built in daily life, in traffic, in boredom, in frustration, in silence. If your daily life is emotionally sloppy, your stress response will be sloppy. If your daily life is emotionally disciplined, Pressure will not surprise you. That's the key. Here's a truth most people avoid. You are not bad at emotional control. You are just inconsistent. And inconsistency is not a flaw. It is a habit. Habits can be changed. But only if you stop lying to yourself about what's happening. Stop saying, "That's just my personality." Start saying, "That's what I've been practicing." That shift restores power. I train this daily. Daily training does not mean intensity. It means regularity. You don't need dramatic moments. You need boring ones done correctly. Holding your tongue when you want to speak. Staying present when you want to escape. Completing tasks when motivation is absent. Maintaining tone when irritation appears. Those are reps. No one applauds them. No one sees them. But they rewire you. Most people quit because training emotional control feels invisible. No immediate reward. No dopamine hit. No praise. Just quiet strength accumulating. That's why few people have it. You don't need their permission to be disciplined without recognition. You need patience. Because emotional control compounds slowly. And then suddenly, one day you realize you're not reacting anymore. Not forcing it. Not suppressing. It just doesn't happen. That's not personality. That's training paying off. You have a choice. You can keep explaining your behavior, or you can start correcting it. Explanation feels easier. Correction builds authority. And authority always begins internally. Here's a simple daily framework. Ask yourself one question every day. What did I train today? Did you train patience? Or irritation? Did you train calm? Or urgency? Did you train restraint? Or expression? Whatever you train today will be stronger tomorrow. What you repeat, you reinforce. And repetition is not about perfection. It's about direction. Even imperfect reps count. Even short pauses count. Even small acts of discipline count. Because the nervous system learns through frequency, not drama. I train this daily. Say it again. Because this phrase destroys excuses. When you say, "I train this daily," you stop waiting to feel different. You start acting different. You stop negotiating with moods. You stop blaming circumstances. You show up to the practice whether you like it or not. That's discipline. And discipline outperforms talent every time. The myth of personality keeps people stuck. The truth of training sets them free. You were not born reactive. You practiced reactivity. You were not born unstable. You rehearsed instability. And you can practice something else. Daily. Quietly. Relentlessly. This chapter removes the illusion. The illusion that emotional control is something you either have or don't have. It isn't. It's something you build. And like any training, it requires consistency. Which brings us to the next challenge. Even with daily training, there is one thing that can sabotage everything. The voice inside your head. The one that narrates, justifies, escalates, and fuels emotion before you even act. If you don't master that voice, it will master you. You are training daily now. But training requires direction. And direction starts with control of your inner dialogue. Chapter 7. Master the inner voice before it masters you. The first emotional loss never happens in public. It never happens through behavior. It happens quietly inside your own head. Before you react, you narrate. Before you explode, you explain. Before you quit, you convince yourself. That's the key. By the time behavior shows up, the decision has already been made internally. Most people try to control actions without ever addressing the voice that commands them. And that is why they fail. You don't lose control because of emotion. You lose control because of the story you tell yourself about that emotion. I choose the voice I obey. Say it again. I choose the voice I obey. Inside your mind, there is always commentary, interpretation, judgment, prediction. That voice decides whether emotion escalates or dissolves. Anger alone does not cause outbursts. The inner voice saying this is disrespectful does. Anxiety alone does not cause avoidance. The inner voice saying this will go wrong does. Insecurity alone does not cause silence. The inner voice saying you'll be exposed does. The voice comes first. Behavior follows. That's the key. Most people believe their thoughts are facts. They aren't. They are suggestions. And every suggestion does not deserve obedience. You have a choice. Right now, your inner voice likely runs unchecked. It narrates freely. It escalates emotion. It justifies reaction. And because it sounds like you assume it is you. It isn't. It's conditioning. The inner voice is a trained habit, nothing more. And like all habits, it can be retrained. I choose the voice I obey. Most people don't realize how fast the inner voice works. Milliseconds. A sensation appears. The voice labels it. The label triggers emotion. The emotion demands action. All before awareness catches up. So if you want emotional control, you must intervene early. At the level of language. Because language shapes perception. And perception shapes response. That's the key. Here's the problem. The inner voice loves certainty. Even false certainty. It would rather be dramatic than accurate. It would rather be loud than correct. This always happens. They're disrespecting me. I can't handle this. This isn't fair. These phrases feel convincing. They feel urgent. But urgency does not equal truth. Most emotional spirals are fueled by exaggerated internal language. Absolutes, assumptions, predictions. And once the voice escalates, emotion follows obediently. You have a choice. You don't need to silence the inner voice. You need to demote it. From commander to commentator. A commentator speaks. Commander gives orders. Most people confuse the two. They hear a thought and act as if it's law. It isn't. It's input. And input can be filtered. I choose the voice I obey. Here's a simple practice that changes everything. When the inner voice speaks, don't argue with it. Don't debate it. Don't suppress it. Label it. Just say, that's a thought, not a fact, not a command. The thought. That separation creates distance. Distance restores choice. That's the key. Once you create distance, you regain authority. Now you can ask, is obeying this voice making me stronger? Is this voice helping me stay disciplined? Is this voice trained or reactive? Most of the time, the answer is obvious. And once it's obvious, obedience weakens. You don't fight the voice. You stop feeding it. What you obey, you empower. What you observe without acting on, you weaken. That's conditioning. You've already learned this pattern. Reactions train the nervous system. Obedience trains the inner voice. Every time you act on reactive self-talk, you reinforce it. Every time you pause and choose differently, you retrain it. I choose the voice I obey. Most people let their inner voice speak in extremes. They say, I can't. I always. I never. This is unbearable. Those words create emotional weight. Change the language and the emotion changes with it. Instead of, I can't handle this, say, this is uncomfortable. Instead of, this always happens, say, this is happening right now. Instead of, I'm losing control, say, I'm noticing tension. That shift is not positivity. It's precision. Precision lowers emotional charge. And emotional charge is what drives impulsive behavior. That's the key. Your inner voice does not need to be positive. It needs to be disciplined. Calm is not created by optimism. It is created by accuracy. Most emotional chaos comes from distorted internal narration. Fix the narration. The emotion follows. You have a choice. Every time the inner voice escalates, you can let it run, or you can interrupt it. Interruptions don't have to be dramatic. A simple phrase is enough. Not useful. That phrase cuts through noise. It reminds you that not every thought deserves airtime. Just because a thought appears does not mean it contributes. I choose the voice I obey. This chapter is not about positive thinking. It's about selective obedience. You are not required to believe everything you think. In fact, emotional discipline depends on refusing most of it. Strong people are not quieter internally. They are more selective. They let thoughts pass. They don't let them lead. That distinction is everything. When you master the inner voice, emotional spirals collapse before they begin. Anger stays contained. Anxiety stays informational. Doubt stays manageable. Because the voice fueling them has lost authority. And authority is the theme of this book. Internal authority. You have learned to separate feeling from action. You have learned to train calm before pressure. You have learned how reactions condition you. You have learned to pause. You have learned to choose strength over relief. You have learned that this is daily training. Now you are learning who truly runs your internal world. Not emotion, not impulse, language. And language is a tool you can wield or be wounded by. Choose deliberately. I choose the voice I obey. Once you do this consistently, something changes. You become harder to provoke, harder to manipulate, harder to destabilize. Not because you shut down, but because nothing inside you escalates without permission. And when the inner world is governed, the outer world loses its grip. But there is one more challenge ahead. Many people, once they gain control, go too far. They mistake regulation for numbness. They confuse strength with detachment. That mistake costs them presence. So the next chapter matters. You've mastered the inner voice. Now you must learn how to remain fully human, without being controlled. Chapter 8. Become unaffected without becoming numb. There is a mistake many disciplined people make once they gain control. They go too far. They stop reacting, but they also stop feeling. They confuse regulation with shutdown. They confuse strength with distance. That mistake costs them presence. Emotional control is not numbness. It is awareness without absorption. That's the key. Most people swing between two extremes. They are either overwhelmed by emotion or disconnected from it, reactive or detached, explosive or shut down. Neither is control. True emotional mastery lives in the middle. Aware, not absorbed. Say it again. Aware, not absorbed. Numbness is not strength. It is avoidance in a different costume. When you suppress emotion, it doesn't disappear. It waits. It leaks. It hardens. And over time, numb people lose clarity, empathy, and precision. That is not discipline. That is damage control. Emotional regulation is different. Regulation means you feel fully, but you do not merge with what you feel. You experience emotion without becoming it. That distinction is everything. Most people think emotions are dangerous because they've only experienced them while being absorbed by them. When anger arrives, they become anger. When fear arrives, they become fear. When sadness arrives, they become sadness. No boundary, no separation. So the only way they know how to survive is to shut down. But shut down is not mastery. It is fear of emotion disguised as control. Aware, not absorbed. Strong people are not less emotional. They are less entangled. They allow emotion to pass through awareness, without letting it hijack identity or behavior. That's the key. Let's be precise. Suppression says, I shouldn't feel this. Absorption says, I am this. Regulation says, I'm noticing this. That language shift matters. I'm noticing anger. I'm noticing tension. I'm noticing sadness. Notice the difference. You are present, but not possessed. That is emotional authority. You have a choice. Most people either drown in emotion or flee from it. Few learn to stay with it calmly, because staying present without reacting feels uncomfortable at first. It removes drama. It removes distraction. It removes escape. But it gives clarity. Clarity is power. When you stay aware without absorption, emotions lose their ability to distort reality. Anger no longer demands expression. Fear no longer demands avoidance. Sadness no longer demands withdrawal. They simply exist, and then pass. Because emotions are temporary unless you feed them. Reaction feeds. Stories feed. Identification feeds. Awareness does not. Aware, not absorbed. Here's the discipline. When emotion arises, resist the urge to do something with it. Don't express it. Don't suppress it. Don't analyze it. Just feel it. Not as a problem, as a sensation. Where is it in the body? What is the intensity? Is it changing? That attention grounds you in reality instead of narrative. And narratives are what create spirals. That's the key. Most emotional suffering is not caused by sensation. It is caused by interpretation. The body feels tension. The mind says, this is bad. The body feels heat. The mind says, I'm losing control. The body feels heaviness. The mind says, this will last forever. Those stories create panic. Awareness dissolves them. When you stay present with sensation without commentary, emotion becomes manageable. Not smaller, clearer. You don't need their permission to stop dramatizing your internal experience. You don't need validation to remain steady. You need practice. Here's a truth most people never hear. Numbness is fragile. Awareness is resilient. Numb people break when something finally gets through. Aware people adapt. Because awareness keeps you connected to reality. And reality is always less extreme than your mind predicts. Aware, not absorbed. This chapter is not asking you to detach from life. It is asking you to stop drowning in it. Presence does not require reactivity. Depth does not require drama. You can care deeply without being destabilized. You can feel fully without losing control. That is mature strength. Most people equate emotional intensity with authenticity. They think if they don't react, they're being fake. That belief keeps them trapped. Authenticity is not expression. Authenticity is alignment. Alignment between values and behavior. And values do not change with emotion. That's the key. When you are aware without absorption, you can choose responses aligned with who you want to be, not what you momentarily feel. That is leadership. Internal leadership. You have a choice. The next time emotion arises, don't ask, "How do I get rid of this?" Ask, "Can I stay present without acting?" That question builds regulation, and regulation builds trust. Trust in yourself. When you trust that you can feel without losing control, fear of emotion disappears. And when fear disappears, you no longer need numbness. That's freedom. Aware, not absorbed. Say it again, because this phrase prevents the final trap of emotional training. The trap of becoming cold. Cold people don't feel less. They just feel less connected. And disconnection erodes judgment, relationships, and meaning. This book is not about becoming indifferent. It's about becoming unshakable and present, calm and alive, stable and engaged. That balance is rare, because it requires discipline and courage. The courage to feel without reacting. The discipline to stay present without acting. That is mastery. You've learned to govern reactions. You've learned to regulate the inner voice. You've learned to hold emotion without drowning or shutting down. Now comes the real test, pressure. Because pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. And the emotionally trained do not crumble under pressure. They sharpen. Chapter 9. Pressure reveals who is trained and who is not. Pressure does not create weakness. It exposes it. When stress arrives, nothing new appears. What shows up has been there all along. That's the key. Pressure is not a force that changes you. It is a spotlight that reveals your conditioning. Under pressure, you do not rise to the occasion. You fall to your level of training. Untrained people fall apart. Trained people become steady. Pressure sharpens me. Say it again. Pressure sharpens me. Most people fear pressure because they associate it with collapse. They think pressure makes them worse. It doesn't. It simply removes disguise. When everything is calm, anyone can appear composed. When stakes rise, when time compresses, when consequences matter, only training remains. You have a choice. You can spend your life avoiding pressure, or you can prepare to use it. Avoidance creates fragility. Preparation creates power. Emotionally trained individuals don't become frantic under stress. They become precise. They speak less. They move cleaner. They waste less energy. Not because they suppress emotion, but because pressure activates their training instead of overwhelming it. That's the difference. Pressure sharpens me. Most people experience pressure as threat. Threat triggers panic. Panic destroys judgment. Trained people experience pressure as signal. A signal to slow down internally. A signal to narrow focus. A signal to execute what has already been practiced. That response is not instinct. It is conditioning. You don't suddenly handle pressure well. You earn it long before pressure arrives. That's the key. Look closely at what pressure does to untrained people. They rush. They over-explain. They overreact. They grasp for certainty. Their emotions spike because their system is unfamiliar with load. Load feels dangerous when you haven't carried it before. But trained individuals recognize the feeling. They've been here. Not in the exact situation, but in the internal state. Tension, urgency, demand. They trained calm when nothing was wrong. They trained pauses. They trained restraint. They trained awareness without absorption. So when pressure arrives, the body says, "This is familiar." Familiarity creates stability. That's the key. Pressure does not overwhelm trained people. It organizes them. Everything unnecessary drops away. Drama disappears. Noise fades. Emotion becomes information, not interference. Pressure sharpens me. Say it until it becomes identity. Because pressure will come. Deadlines, conflict, responsibility, loss, expectation. You don't get to choose whether pressure enters your life. You only choose whether it breaks you or builds you. Most people reveal their weakest habits under pressure. The procrastinator panics. The people-pleaser collapses. The reactive person explodes. The avoidant disappears. Not because pressure caused it, but because pressure removed their ability to pretend. You have a choice. Stop judging yourself for how you perform under pressure. Start examining what you trained before it arrived. Pressure is feedback. It tells you exactly where your conditioning is strong and where it isn't. And feedback is useful. If pressure exposes panic, you know what to train. If it exposes reactivity, you know what to discipline. If it exposes avoidance, you know where to stand firm. Most people take pressure personally. They say, "I'm not good under stress." That statement is meaningless. The correct statement is, "I haven't trained for this level yet." That's empowering, because training can be increased. Pressure sharpens me. Emotionally trained individuals don't eliminate stress responses. They shorten them. They recover faster. They stabilize quicker. They regain clarity sooner. That recovery speed is the real advantage. Anyone can hold it together briefly. Trained people can return to center repeatedly. That's the skill. And it's built in daily practice. Small irritations, minor frustrations, neutral moments. That's where pressure tolerance is built. If you avoid discomfort daily, pressure will crush you. If you face discomfort daily, pressure will activate you. That's the key. Here's a truth most people miss. Pressure feels heavier when you are emotionally invested in outcome instead of execution. Untrained people obsess over results. They attach identity to success. They fear failure. That emotional attachment amplifies pressure. Trained people focus on process. They execute what they can control. They release what they can't. That shift lowers emotional noise, and lower noise equals higher performance. Pressure sharpens me. This chapter is not about becoming fearless. Fear will still appear. It's about becoming functional with fear present. Trained individuals feel fear and act anyway. Untrained individuals feel fear and freeze or overreact. Fear is not the issue. Training is. You don't need to eliminate pressure. You need to become the kind of person pressure reveals well. That identity is built slowly, quietly, without applause. Every time you stay calm when it would be easier to react, you train for pressure. Every time you act deliberately instead of emotionally, you prepare for pressure. Every time you hold yourself steady when stakes are low, you borrow that strength for when stakes are high. Pressure sharpens me. Say it again. Because pressure is not your enemy. It is your final exam. And exams don't care about intention. They measure preparation. This chapter teaches acceptance. Acceptance that pressure is coming. Acceptance that it will reveal you. Acceptance that you can decide what it reveals. Not through wishing, through training. You have done the work. You've learned to separate feeling from action. You've trained calm before the storm. You've broken reactive conditioning. You've learned to pause. You've chosen strength over relief. You've committed to daily training. You've mastered the inner voice. You've learned to stay aware without becoming numb. Now pressure is no longer a threat. It is confirmation. Confirmation of who you have become. And when you can stand steady under pressure, something changes. Your confidence stops being loud. Your self-respect stops being fragile. Your presence stops needing validation. Because you trust yourself. That trust is emotional authority. And emotional authority is the foundation of everything else. Which brings us to the final chapter. Because once you govern yourself under pressure, you stop seeking approval. You stop reacting for attention. You stop outsourcing your worth. You begin to live from internal command. Chapter 10. Emotional authority is the foundation of self-respect. Self-respect does not come from achievements. It does not come from praise. It does not come from being liked. It comes from one place only. Self-command. That's the key. When you can govern your emotional state, confidence stops being fragile. You no longer need approval to feel stable. You no longer need control over others to feel secure. Because you control yourself. I govern myself. Say it again. I govern myself. Most people chase confidence outwardly. They try to prove. They try to impress. They try to perform. But confidence built on external validation collapses under pressure. One criticism shakes it. One failure cracks it. One rejection destroys it. That's not confidence. That's dependence. Real confidence is quiet, grounded, unshakable, and it is built through emotional authority. When you trust yourself not to overreact, not to panic, not to abandon your values under pressure, you stop needing reassurance. That's the difference. I govern myself. Self-respect is not a feeling. It is a consequence of repeated self-leadership. Every time you act in alignment with your standards, despite emotion, you deposit trust into yourself. And trust compounds. Most people don't lack confidence. They lack self-trust. They don't trust themselves to stay calm. They don't trust themselves to follow through. They don't trust themselves under pressure. So they seek control externally. They try to control outcomes, control people, control perception. That always fails, because control over others is unstable. Control over yourself is permanent. That's the key. Emotionally governed people don't need to announce their strength. It's felt. They don't rush. They don't over-explain. They don't react defensively, because nothing inside them is panicking. That internal order projects outward. Leadership begins there, not with charisma, not with volume, with regulation. People trust those who are steady. They follow those who are consistent. They respect those who don't break under pressure. That respect starts with how you treat yourself. I govern myself. Most people undermine their own authority daily. They say they'll do something and don't. They promise restraint and react. They commit to discipline and negotiate with emotion. Each broken agreement weakens self-respect. Not dramatically, quietly, until one day they feel hollow and don't know why. This book fixes that, because emotional authority restores integrity. Integrity is not morality. It is alignment. Alignment between what you decide and what you do. And emotional control is what protects that alignment when feelings try to sabotage it. That's the key. Consistency is not about motivation. It's about governance. When you govern yourself, behavior becomes predictable to you, and predictability builds trust. When you trust yourself, you stop hesitating. You stop second-guessing. You stop seeking permission. You act calmly, deliberately, without drama. I govern myself. This chapter ties everything together. Why does emotional control matter? Not to look calm, not to feel superior, not to suppress humanity. It matters because without it, you cannot lead your own life. Every uncontrolled reaction erodes authority. Every impulsive decision weakens respect. Every emotional compromise teaches your system that standards are optional. And standards that are optional are meaningless. You have a choice. Either your emotions govern you, or you govern them. There is no third option. If you don't command yourself, something else will. Impulse, fear, validation, comfort, and those masters are unreliable. I govern myself. Emotionally governed people don't chase confidence. They radiate it. Not loudly, not aggressively, steadily. They know who they are because they have proven it to themselves repeatedly. Under stress, under boredom, under temptation. They don't need to be right. They don't need to be praised. They don't need to win every interaction. They need to remain aligned. That alignment is self-respect. And self-respect is felt in posture, in voice, in decision-making, cannot be faked. This is why emotional mastery precedes every form of leadership. You cannot lead others if you cannot lead yourself. You cannot demand discipline if you lack it internally. You cannot expect respect if you abandon your own standards. The chain always starts inside. I govern myself. Say it again, because this phrase is not motivational. It is declarative. It is the identity you earn through training. This book was never about emotions. It was about authority. Authority over reaction. Authority over impulse. Authority over narrative. Authority under pressure. When you have that authority, everything else stabilizes. Your decisions improve. Your relationships sharpen. Your confidence settles. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. Emotionally trained individuals are not perfect. They still feel. They still struggle. They still experience doubt. The difference is simple. They don't let those states drive behavior. They govern themselves anyway. That is freedom. Freedom from moods. Freedom from approval. Freedom from emotional chaos. Not through suppression, but through leadership. This final chapter is your anchor. Every time emotion rises, remember this. You are not here to be comfortable. You are here to be consistent. You are not here to react. You are here to decide. You are not here to be ruled. You are here to govern. I govern myself. And when you do, daily, quietly, relentlessly, Self-respect stops being something you chase. It becomes who you are. Emotional control is not about never feeling. It is about never being ruled. Every day you are either training emotional authority or reinforcing emotional chaos. There is no neutral. Every reaction teaches your nervous system what is acceptable. Every pause builds power. You don't need motivation. You need repetition. You don't need insight. You need discipline. Train calm when nothing is happening. Pause when impulse demands action. Choose behavior over mood every single day. This is not a mindset. This is a practice. And here is your challenge. For the next 30 days, refuse to let emotion decide your behavior. Feel everything. Follow nothing blindly. Train daily. Govern yourself. And become unshakable.